Anton Karras, as you know, of the Third Man. Hi, everybody. I'm Randy Credico, live on the fly here on 99.5 FM in New York City, WBAI. You can stream us at WBAI.org. And if you want to support this program, you can. Go to give to the number two, WBAI.org. And I just want to mention that the Assange, In Defense of Assange, the book that we've been offering from Or Books, for a pledge of $50 is still available, signed by Margaret Ratner Kunstler, one of the two co-editors with Tariq Ali. That's there. Just call the number 212-209-2950. It's autographed, it's yours, and it's great. They got like John Pilger, they got Chris Hedges, and 100 other people contributing essays and testimonials to Assange. Okay, it's 212-209-2950. We've been doing a lot of Assange shows at this station. Actually, the Assange Countdown to Freedom actually started here 5 years ago. And we're doing it here. It's on our website at Assange Countdown to Freedom. So, but today we have we're going to do a departure. Now, I got the vaccination shot a month ago, both of them, Moderna, over a month period. And I haven't had any conversations with too many people about this, about the COVID, except for my really slamming Andrew Cuomo on Anya Parampil's show. And I've been slamming him for 20 years. But other than that, I've been pretty quiet because, people like there's some conspiracies out there. Was it created by the U.S.? Was it a wet market? Was it a lab? I mean, I don't know, and I really don't get involved in this type of a conspiracy thing. But there are theories out there that are very interesting, and it has to be questioned where this came from. It really has to be questioned, and I got the perfect person for this, who's been writing about it for the last year, and I like him. Sam Husseini, I like him because, like me, he's been tossed out of places. He's been given the bum's rush. Remember, 2 years ago, I was thrown out of the White House Correspondents' Dinner because I got up in the middle of the show and started screaming at the at the stage, saying, "Why not Julian Assange? Give him the award!" So they tossed me out, dragged me out, and I was a special guest of Yahoo News and Michael Isikoff. But he's been thrown out. And Sam, first of all, I want to thank you for doing this show today.
Sure.
I really admire the fact that you got tossed out a few times. One with the when you questioned some big shot from Saudi Arabia over
Right.
the Arab Spring. What was that like? I mean, to confront the Saudi leader. Did you get nervous about that?
Oh yeah, I was sweating bullets. I'm not going to lie. It was during the Arab uprisings, and there was this Saudi prince, he calls himself Prince Turkey, pontificating about things, and I could see where things were going, that the Saudis were going to call the shots in terms of what was happening and how they were going to deform the Arab uprisings. So I questioned him about the legitimacy of the Saudi regime, and the executive director of the press club suspended me. And the ethics committee later overturned that, but it was still kind of brutal, and getting a little manhandled. I was later much more brazenly manhandled in Helsinki. But yeah,
Yes, that was during the in 2018 during the summit between Trump and Putin, and you were thrown out of there as well. I've seen the video of it, but you're in good company. If you did get thrown out, you weren't doing your job.
Yeah.
But one of these days we're going to have to really concentrate on Saudi Arabia because they are an outlaw state, and they're a vile state. And MBS definitely murdered Khashoggi, and he got away with it. And we can talk about that. But it really is a bad situation, Saudi Arabia. I'm sure you will agree with that.
Absolutely. And the other thing, in Helsinki, I tried to ask a question about the nuclear weapon ban treaty. 122 countries came together trying to ban nuclear weapons. The group behind the effort got the Nobel Peace Prize. Nobody asked Trump about it. Nobody asked Putin about it. And I tried really hard to get a question in at their summit about it. And I got manhandled, dragged out, tossed in the back of a police vehicle, and thrown into a cell until midnight when the press center is closed.
Well, that's really a badge of honor, man, and congratulations. That's all I can tell you.
Thank
Um, Congratulations. But now you've been working on the last year on the origins of this. It's an investigation. You haven't made any conclusions, but you've been asking a lot of questions, and you wrote this one eye-popping article for Salon. Did the virus come from a lab? Maybe not, but it exposes the threat of what is it? A biowarfare arms race. So can you just kind of elaborate on that, how you got into it? And sorry for that bad introduction into that article here.
No, not at all. Thank you. I got into it in February of 2020. The CDC was having a news conference at the press club, and I try to ask tough questions at these news conferences. And I had just become aware that there was a major biolab in Wuhan where the outbreak started. So I didn't know a ton about it, but I knew it was apparently the only BSL-4, that's the highest level, biolab in all of China, and it's the only one in China. So I just asked the CDC person, is it a complete coincidence that this started in the one city in all of China with this highest level lab that deals with the most dangerous pathogens? And she kind of brushed it off, and then I tried to ask follow-ups. She said, no, it definitely came from all of the information we have is that it's zootic that it came from nature. And I said, well, that doesn't clearly mean that it didn't have something to do with the lab. That is, these labs collect things from all over the place. The closest known relatives to SARS-CoV-2 apparently came from these caves, but they're like 1,000 miles away. So isn't it possible that they collected these viruses from these bat caves 1,000 miles away, took them to the lab in Wuhan, and they were somehow leaked out? And she didn't give a straight answer to that. She didn't give a straight answer to my questions about the moral and ethical debate that's gone on in scientific circles for some years about so-called gain of function.
What does that mean?
Gain of function is a euphemism. Some people call it gain of threat. In the scientific literature, it's sometimes called the creation of potentially pandemic pathogens. Basically, what it involves is scientists taking a dangerous pathogen and then trying to make it more deadly or more transmissible. And this has been derided by some scientists as a crazy endeavor, as an incredibly dangerous endeavor. When a scientist in the Netherlands attempted to make the avian flu, which is very deadly, to make it more easily transmissible by passing it through a series of ferrets, because ferrets have a respiratory system that's similar to those of humans.
But wait. You're telling me someone in the Netherlands did this for the express purpose of this guy mad? I mean,
Fouchier is his name. He did this in 2011. It caused an uproar, in part whether or not he should do it, and in part whether or not he should publish his results. There are also scientists at the University of Wisconsin that did similar experiments. That they make deadly pathogens more deadly, allegedly for the purpose of figuring out how to combat them if nature throws them at us, or if the terrorists, quote unquote, the terrorists do something like that, so we know how to combat it. So under the guise of biodefense, they're doing what effectively is biowarfare. And the author of the US law on the Biological Weapons Convention, the implementing legislation, is Francis Boyle. You probably know him. He's a lefty lawyer at the University of Illinois. And he has been screaming for years, they are perverting the law that I wrote. He's very strident in his language. I mean, he calls them death scientists, that they are creating these more and more deadly pathogens that could kill millions and billions of people if they're allowed to continue. So, because his implementing legislation, he claims his interpretation of it does not allow for this kind of thing.
Right.
And basically, the U.S., by pursuing this so-called exemption to biowarfare, saying, okay, we can make deadly pathogens because we're actually trying to combat against them. Francis Boyle argues with considerable evidence that other countries are now doing the same.
So you have an escalating biowarfare.
Effectively an arms race, largely out of public view, because people think that biowarfare ended. They think that the genie was put back in the bottle. It wasn't, and in part, it wasn't after 2011, after the 9/11 attacks. People will remember, I hope, that there were the anthrax attacks. Letters in the mail were sent to members of the media and members of Congress that had anthrax spores in them. They were widely portrayed as coming from Al Qaeda or Iraq or the bad Arabs and Muslims. They ended up coming out of a U.S. or a U.S. allied lab, and they never really got to the bottom of it. The guy that the FBI tried to pin it on two guys, and your friend Mueller was head of the
friend.
Your friend Mueller.
Your Roger Stone's friend.
Was brought before Congress in 2008 to Patrick Leahy, Senator Patrick Leahy, who was one of the targets of the anthrax attacks. And the FBI pinned it all on one guy, Bruce Ivins, a scientist, who killed himself. So there was never a trial. There was never a sorting through of the evidence. And Leahy told Mueller to his face, I don't buy this. I don't buy that one guy who has now killed himself did all of this. And that's where the matter stood. And we never got to the bottom of these attacks that put a panic throughout the entire country. I hope you recall, Randy. I mean, this was when the Bush administration was able to ram through the so-called Patriot Act and to start us on the on the way to the perpetual wars that were in the invasion of Afghanistan and then, of course, Iraq.
There's a difference here between the anthrax.
And I'm sorry. I want to tie it in to say, then they juiced up all of the funding for the bioweapon stuff. That's when the funding really began in 2000 in response to the anthrax attacks, which is insane because the anthrax attacks came out of a U.S. lab. So there's this incredible contradiction. U.S. labs posed this threat, and then they took that as an excuse to massively ramp up the funding for more biodefense, quote unquote, work.
So this thing is generated by greed within certain elements in the Defense Department or the CIA and other institutions, government institutions?
I think there's a lot of greed involved. There's geopolitical advantage involved. Now, a bunch of scientists in 2005, 700 scientists from around the US in 2005 wrote a letter to the NIH saying, stop funding all of this militarized stuff. You're distorting our field. And it was Fauci who responded. And he said, effectively, look, the American people have told us through their elected representatives, he's referring to the Bush-Cheney administration there, that they want this funding done. Either it's done through the NIH and we have a seat at the table, or it's going to be done through the Pentagon. We want a seat at the table. Put on your big boy pants and let's get rolling here.
Well, let me ask you this. What's the motivation? I mean, is it possible that that this is like a race to get the nuclear weapon? Is it something like that to have like the supreme weapon before somebody else gets it?
Yeah. I mean, and even if nobody else gets it, I mean, the U.S. could have left well enough alone and, strengthened international law and made sure that the genie stayed in the bottle and that we wouldn't have a biological weapons arms race. The U.S. chose to help trigger it. And now other countries, China, Russia, France, UK, Israel have gotten into the act, and now presumably more countries are going to get into the act.
Well, what happens if everybody gets, something that is a super spreader, super killer like that? What do you do at that point? If you're only encouraging, fostering other countries develop this kind of biowarfare material, um, what's the end?
Well,
What's
I mean, the U.S. has taken out its what it sees as adversaries, whether that's Iraq with false information about them allegedly having WMDs or whoever. So the U.S. government has unfortunately become an empire and seeks to further militarize things for their own advantage. And if it sees somebody it regards as an adversary, then it finds a way to undermine them. That's been the pattern.
who benefits from the this pandemic right now? There must be some people that are benefiting, corporations that are benefiting. We know that these medical health organizations are all doing well, but who is the ultimate beneficiary of a pandemic like this? Certainly, it's not the people.
Yeah, it's definitely not the people, and this isn't quite core to the work that I've done on the cause of the pandemic, but clearly Silicon Valley has been a huge beneficiary. Here we are on Zoom. Silicon Valley has benefited tremendously, and virtually every mom and pop business across the U.S. and I guess around the world has taken a huge hit. If we're just looking at it in terms of economics, and every old person who has to spend time alone has taken a huge. I mean, lots of people have taken a lot of huge hits.
I've taken a hit, man. Believe me, I'd rather do this in the studio than do it by Zoom. And the isolation and the depression that comes with it. The Undertaker has done very well. I want to get back now to
Yeah.
what you have learned
Right.
in your investigation as an investigative journalist. What you think is the genesis of this? Do you have any conclusions, or are you just positing what is possible?
Um, I see a pattern of deceit from certain quarters trying to pretend that a lab leak is impossible. And there have been clearly orchestrated campaigns to try to dismiss it. And going through them, I've been able to find a lot of conflicts of interest and a lot of the motivations for this. One key group is EcoHealth Alliance. Its president, Peter Daszak, has gotten incredible glowing media over more than the last year. He helped fund the dangerous lab work at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which may, I highlight, may be the source for the pandemic. They funded it money that the NIH approved. He got on all kinds of media as the great source of information, from 60 Minutes to Democracy Now to the New York Times to the Guardian. And he was constantly portrayed last year as, oh, you work with these people, could they be guilty? And no, of course not. That's crazy. That's a crazy Trump conspiracy theory. Instead of saying, hold on, you worked with these people, don't you have an obvious conflict of interest? What's going on? Shouldn't we be investigating this, including your role on this? What's truly perverse is not only was it in the media coverage, but he actually got on both committees that have been formed so far about COVID origins. The Lancet put together a committee, and he was the head of it. And the WHO committee, he was on that as well. And he's the only person on both committees. I dug into his funding. He's constantly portrayed as having had this NIH grant, 3.7 million over 5 years, and it got cut off by Trump, and then it got reinstated. That's nothing on his budget. He gets far more money from the Pentagon. He gets far more money from USAID, which I'm sure you're aware, Randy, has been portrayed at times as a sort of soft power CIA. That USAID can fund ways of undermining the Cuban government or other governments that the U.S. seeks to weaken. that those funding sources. I mean, he gets over $100 million from the Pentagon and USAID, far more than he gets from NIH. And
Can I stop you there for a minute because we only have a few minutes left, and this is
oh goodness,
what
okay,
to talk about. There was one guy from the CDC who I saw in 60 Minutes who actually believes that this came from a lab. Uh,
right.
what is your speculation? Do you think it's 50-50? Is it possible that it came, and was it the Chinese? Could it have been planted in Wuhan?
Right. See, now that's like the anthrax attacks in 2001. I think we have to be mindful that it could be a plant. A lot of people in the U.S. establishment are dismissing the possibility that it had anything to do with a lab, and they're deceiving, like Daszak, about that. Other people around the Trump administration have been saying it. Let's blame it all on the Chinese, and it's been used as an anti-Chinese mantra. And I think that's dangerous in a different way, but still very dangerous. I think that the evidence really seriously needs to be looked at, and neither one of those parties is coming up with answers. Certainly not the first party. The second one might come up with some answers, but they are clearly pushing a political agenda. And I think Redmond, the former head of the CDC, might be part of that.
Right.
Um,
Blame it
but
all on the Chinese. It's all part of this. If it did happen and they are responsible, if you're fingering them, it's all part of this mass propaganda movement to demonize the Chinese as this new Cold War with them seems to be escalating without end.
Correct. So it's plausible, and it has not been seriously discussed by any establishment figures at all, that it could be a way of framing the Chinese labs. Again, that's what happened in 2001. The 2001 anthrax attacks were a false flag attack. They were portrayed as coming from Arabs and Muslims, and they ended up coming out of a U.S. or U.S. allied lab. And
I've heard so many different theories on this. I mean, somebody told me they think it was Grandpa Al Lewis and the Munsters in his laboratory that developed this virus. All right, so we got a minute and a half left. I have to get you back on next week and continue this discussion about this. It's a very interesting topic. So what happens now? I mean, where are you going with this now? You've been working on this for a year. You don't have any conclusive evidence where it came from. Are you still trying to find out where it may have come from?
I'm trying to the extent that I can to find out directly where it came from, but I'm also trying to find out the connections between the scientists involved. Peter Daszak put together this letter in the Lancet, U.S. Right to Know, who I've been working with lately, a transparency group, FOIA'd some of the documentation and found that he orchestrated this letter that dismissed lab origin as a conspiracy theory. So he's a very interested party. I've been going through those scientists who signed that letter. One of them is named Charles Kalischer. He's been accused of spreading dengue fever by the Cuban government.
Wow.
Okay, so what's the story with that? Who are these scientists really? Other scientists I've been looking at who were involved in dismissing it were involved in US labs in West Africa and were accused by Africans of possibly having accidentally started the Ebola outbreak in 2014. They authored a Nature Medicine article claiming this could not have possibly come out of a lab, and everybody's treated them like royalty, not scrutiny. We need to scrutinize these people. Just because you put on a white lab coat does not mean that you are above influence and that you're above corruption.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it at there. I'm going to have to ask you back next Wednesday because I have a lot more questions to ask you, and let's just mull this over. We've been talking to Sam Husseini, investigative journalist, and we'll see you next week here on WBAI. I'm Randy Credico. See you this Saturday at 6 p.m. and then following Wednesday at 2:30. Thank you very much, and see you soon.